So I'll add to what Sachin has said. So, just for the benefit of the audience, so the entire globally, the investment in AI by the luxury segment will be around $7 billion by 2022. Okay, which is currently at around $2 to $3 billion. So you can understand how AI is being perceived as a great game changer by the entire luxury industry, and where diamond and gemstone jewelry plays a huge role. And Harrods has joined hands with SAP to come up with a technology AI wherein suppose I visit a store, and whenever I'm standing there, the store AI will assess my style from the clothes that I'm wearing and what I'm wearing, and will compare that to what is there in the stock of that store, and suggest that you can try this. So this is the future, and this is how things are moving, and at a very very fast pace. Yeah, Anil, over
So
to you.
now we have a limited time, but we will extend by a few minutes because, as I already said that luxury is a vast subject. But the most important element is about the innovation part. So while we are with Mahul, we will definitely discuss. We'll divide innovation into three parts. One is innovation, how media has innovated. The traditional media, how they were innovated, because communication is the most important element. So we'll
Yes.
talk about innovation in digital media or in traditional media, how they're transforming into digital medium. Then we'll also briefly talk about disruptive innovation in products and disruptive innovation in retail concepts. So these basically this is how we're going to divide, and then we'll open it for question and answers. So over to you, Mahul, please.
Sure. Thank you, Anil. So I'll be very brief for the paucity of time. So what has happened is, a new segment of consumers have come up who are the future. So I've coined a term for them. It's called millennial millionaires. And these are the gang which will stay with you for the next 30, 40 years. So most of the luxury brands and gem and jewelry business owners, they need to focus on this category. Now, the moment you focus on this category, I've written in detail in my third book, Lux Inferno, on that. You need to understand these are the guys who are always on their mobile. They are not the people who will pick up a traditional Vogue, who will pick up a traditional Forbes, who will pick up a traditional Fortune, and then flip through the pages and look at your ad. Things have changed. They will only see the phone. They will only see the WhatsApp. They will only see the Instagram. They will only see Facebook and Twitter. So, they are the kind who reads newspapers also through social media. It's a different mindset altogether, but these are the people with means, the millennials with means. So there has been a gradual change. I remember it started with Prada, and a gradual shift where most of the luxury brands have been trying to move slowly away from the traditional glossy high-end magazine covers and back covers and centerpieces, ads in those, to the Instagrams, the social medias of the world, trying to curate and customize ads based on the searches, based on the pages you visit, based on where you browse in the web. So this is the kind of customization that is happening, but it is happening in a very slow pace, because the inertia of the great brands, the great iconic brands, in holding on to the way they used to publicize, the way they used to create use a dream merchant to create that awe, that aura, that social elevation. So when you own the brand, you'll be socially elevated, was through very traditional means of media, these magazines and all that. But that has changed, and while they are slowly coming up to it, but it'll take some time. But they need to fasten the pace because of COVID, because the printing is stopped and a lot of things have happened. So this transition needs to be very fast now. Over to you, Anil.
Yeah, so I'll just add one line. See what I wanted from you. Like for example, magazines like Vogue and Harper Bazaars, we have a big history, and they also are somewhat, to use Philip's word, been arrogant, because they will not take ad from a X, Y, Z and brand.
Right,
So
right.
they are also now moving to the digital medium. Okay,
Yes,
having
yes.
said that, because of the paucity of time, I will now move to the product innovation. And when we talk about product and the innovation in product, there is a term which has been very popular because of the success of Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley adopting that concept. It is known as disruptive innovation. But disruptive innovation is not only about digital disruption, because the theory was written by a Harvard professor, Clayton Christensen, in 1995. Okay, and he wrote the theory, and he applied to a steel mill. How a small steel mill disrupted the business and overtook a established player. And now, if you also talk about blue ocean strategy, the theory was written in 2004. Basically, both the theories say the same thing. And what they say is the smaller player dislodges the bigger player because of lack of foresight on the part of the established player. So what happens is the established player focuses on the existing customer. How can I make a bigger car? How can I make a more fuel efficient car? But the disruptor comes out with a different thing altogether, like Tesla. So that is about automobiles. But coming to our industry, see, the first disruption, as I know,
So
occurred.
Anil, on Tesla, Tesla has recently launched a model of Mustang and Tesla on the Tesla platform. Can you imagine a power car on an electric vehicle? So
Yeah.
imagine the disruption.
Okay. So now I'll be specific and come to the jewelry industry. See, Indians were the first ones to disrupt and come out with the innovation. You go back into the 60s when the Jews, they were focusing on big stones. But our Gujarati business community identified an opportunity and started cutting small diamond, cutting and polishing. And look how they have become big. But they innovated in product, but they did not invest or add value in branding. And that's why the industry has not grown as it should have. That is one example. Even earlier, like for example, 100 years back, when cultured pearls were introduced by Mikimoto, they caused a big disruption in the natural pearl market. And similar thing is about to happen in the lab-grown diamond market, because it is also an innovative concept based on technology. It has the power to disrupt the entire market. Now, lastly, I'm going very fast because of the paucity of time. I will focus on the watch industry. Watch industry does not learn from past mistakes. The 70s example, the quartz technology, how the Japanese really threw the entire industry out of gear. Same thing happened with Apple. So when Apple watches were launched, what did the industry say? They ignored the threat. It's a toy. It will not sell. And look at the things today. They are selling 30 million watches, one brand, and all the industry put together sells only 20 million. So this is what I wanted to convey. And De Beers, Sachin's company, has been very proactive. They have launched a LGD brand. So that is about product innovation, but we also move on to the retail innovation. And when we are talking about retail innovation, I cannot not mention the digital first, or DNVBs, digital native vertical brands. And it started with the popularity of Warby Parker or Bonobos or Casper. They are not into luxury, but it is slowly the trend is moving towards luxury. And if you see the digital native brand, which is only digital, they sell only through online medium, they have to move into physical stores. And all these brands, I mentioned Casper, I mentioned Warby Parker, and all their brands. But because it's a integrated structure, you can't just have online presence. So when you take an Indian example, what is CaratLane? It started as a digital native brand, and now it has become digitally native, vertically integrated. So that has changed the entire scenario. Now look at Zara. What has Zara done? It was a vertically integrated brand. it was not into digital space. They are still not there. But they have integrated the physical stores and opened online space and they're. So over to you, Sachin and Philip, your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would say we have to say thank you to Apple. Apple today is even the biggest watch producer. They are even producing, I saw the number, 35 million watches.
Exactly.
And I would say such a situation is the best engine for innovation, for development, to invent and to move at the end of the day. Yeah? As you already said, in the 70s, the Swiss watch industry was very close to a collapse. Only this plastic swatch was saving the whole industry. And now Apple is putting again a watch on 35 million people's wrist. And I would say this is a great opportunity for every brand.
Exactly.
And we have to connect now our tradition with the past. We have to connect our yesterday with the tomorrow. And when we are not able to connect these two components, then we are really in difficulties. It's not, as I said at the beginning, what we want. It's not our ideas, it's not whatever. It's really, we have to be focused on the client. We have to be focused on the needs of the client. And we have to start the journey together with the clients. And therefore, for me, this Corona crisis is a great chance really to be again much more focused on our future client and to think about what are their needs, how can I translate as a brand their needs into a concrete product, how can I bring our values together with the needs of these future clients. And therefore the management of every brand, they now have to take the decisions and they have to take the right steps into the future. But I would say 35 million people now, they have again the feeling of a watch on the wrist. And I'm sure they will have a look on other watches because they see it's nice to wear one. It's something what you can talk about with your colleagues and friends. And it's a tool of communication because every brand is also a tool of communication. You are showing that you are a participant of a group through your product. So therefore, I would say it's great that Apple is selling 35 millions of watches and opening us the door to a new potential client and to a new future.
Great. So what's your take, Sachin?
I love this analogy, Philip. I think it's quite cool. I think similarly, Alan, I think we shouldn't mistake innovation with sort of a new product line. Like for example, you mentioned about LGDs. Now, lab-grown diamonds have been around for 27 years. It's not something that's as recent. And the invasion we did into a lab-grown diamond brand that we had, it's not at any point in time there to compete with natural diamonds because they're two completely different product sets. And we can have a different debate about it.
But that is not our topic today.
What I'm trying to bring in is, it's extremely important that we get the confidence of what we are doing, the faith in our category. And when I'm talking about diamonds, what do diamonds fundamentally do? They hold meaning. They represent love. They hold so much of things in it. And one, we need to be celebrating that, being confident about it. But we need to evolve on the kind of design and everything. That's a continuous evolution. But most importantly, keep in mind how a consumer is keeping that product in their life. And if let's say 30 years back, the biggest segment was somebody would get down on their knees and propose to you, and that's what a meaning of diamond is. Today, the biggest segment, into the future is a concept that we call as womenomics. Because, in 2020, I don't know what the number that we have post-COVID, but at least from the beginning of 2020, the number was some $8 trillion of wealth that women will have a decision on, and that self-consumption is happening. So I think we need to keep evolving from a perspective as to what are the consumers looking at from our industry.
So Sachin, you have been very helpful to the retail fraternity. And having said that, in this year's Forever Mark virtual forum in America, I read about it in the media that what the American part or the American vertical is doing is that they are getting helping retailers on their online journey with the help of the site holders and with the retailer. They're creating a platform, sort of a marketplace for diamond jewelry. So can we expect a similar development in India?
Really cool stuff coming in, round the corner.
Beg your pardon?
very cool stuff coming in just around the corner. And we will enable all our partners with really cool technology and get them closer to the consumers. So it's just around the corner.
So I will wrap this up on a philosophical note. See, today with the pandemic, the priorities of all of us is changing. We are definitely more conscious about our environment and about helping others. So the younger generation is ahead of us. They have identified sustainability as a lifestyle value, not now, but for the past so many years. So now this is also accelerating, and which is a very good thing for all of us, because we don't know what is the wealth that we have. If we are not able to spend the wealth, we don't know how long we are going to live. So on that note, I know that Forever Mark has worked with the Butterfly Mark, and you are also committed to the sustainability aspect, the value. Having said that, now companies like Starrays are moving towards carbon neutrality, and carbon neutrality is a holistic concept. So if you have to reduce the carbon emission, it's not about mining or obnoxious gases, but even if you have to make a phone call, you are emitting a lot of carbon. So how to reduce that? How to travel less? It's a totally 360-degree concept. And I read about the fact that a lot of diamond companies are also following that same route. Now, finally to the digital native brands, one particular company that I like the concept, there's a company by the name of Allbirds. It makes shoes. And the product was launched in 2015. And within 4 years, they have reached a valuation of $1.5 billion. So now, what is Allbirds all about? They make shoes out of merino wool. They use biodegradable materials such as sugarcane waste. Yeah, and you'll be surprised that they are not just happy being an online seller. They have opened stores really fast all across the world. They have stores in London, they have stores in America, they have stores in New Zealand, they have stores in China. That's the way to go. It may not be a luxury company, but look at the way they have grown. It's the mindset. So if digital native brands can do it, why can't a luxury brand do it? And this is something which collectively we have to think and grow. Of course, Philip and Sachin are there to guide us. So thank you very much. We now open the session for the question and answer interaction. And I really appreciate your patience. All of you, as the time, everybody is busy, and there has been a, webinar fatigue. Yet you chose to be with us and not just log in, but throughout with us. So I'm really very grateful. Thank you very much. Now I will request Sachin to take the questions of his choice. The questions are right there before you. The comments are right there with you. So would you like to take a go at it, please?
Let me quickly have a look at them.
At the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A box and there is a chat box. So let's take a few questions.
So Mariam already asked me about the invitation for the virtual forum. I took the liberty to post it for the wider audience as well.
Come again, I didn't hear you, sorry.
I'm saying one of your guests, Mariam, requested me for the link to the virtual forum that I've already posted on the group.
Okay. So, Philip, there is a question for you. How does the Switch watch makers compete with Apple, which has become the world's largest watch brand?
It's already what I said before. Apple is opening us the door to the new clients, and they are preparing for us the client of tomorrow. And we and Favre Leuba are also thinking about to launch a connected watch because this is in the interest of today's clients. And I don't gonna repeat myself. I said Apple is doing a great job, and it's just to take this opportunity as a brand and to translate it into future products of Favre Leuba. And it's not, and you talked before about sustainability. We have also a project internally to produce a watch out of recycled plastic, also to follow the needs of the client when you talk about sustainability and of the respect of the nature. So we are taking these trends for serious, and we are having a look at how we can translate it into new product, and therefore it's for us also a great opportunity to have to be part of the Titan family, where they are always thinking ahead. And for sure, we will also work and talk to our colleagues in India how we can, what could be the next step, and also to develop the things together.
Okay, so I have gone through the questions. Some of the questions really need elaborate answers. So I would just request all the audience members who have posed questions to us that your email ID is with us. I will ensure, I will push these two gentlemen to answer those questions and we'll email them to you. But having said that, Mahul, you have a friend and I think a fan among the audience. And there's a particular one lady who wants to know more about your book. So you tell about those 3 books and then we'll end and we'll go.
Okay.
So over to you, Mahul.
What is her name? I'm not able to see the chat there.
Okay. Did you find that? Just check in the question Q&A box.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But anyway, I'll thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that wonderful question. So I'll be very brief. So my 3 books are called the Lux Trilogy, and their objective is to give a deeper meaning to luxury beyond just price tags and a catalog. So Decoding Lux, which is the first book, is on history of luxury in India, tracing back to the from the time of the Maharajas to the modern times and the strategy thereof. Dark Lux, and it's a work of non-fiction. Dark Lux is a work of fiction, and it is basically deals with the dark side of luxury. So luxury and crime, a very, very difficult marriage, but a marriage nonetheless. So it deals with luxury and crime. And finally, the third book, Lux Inferno, which was released this year, Lux Inferno, which deals partly with fiction, a story of a journalist, how the journalist is caught into this inferno of luxury, and so that is the first part, and whether he is able to get out of that inferno. So a comparison between the inferno of Dante and inferno of luxury, the 9 circles of hell. And then part 2 is on contemporary essays on brand and strategy, etc. So thank you very much for the question, and please do read my books. Over to you, Anil.
It is my time to express my gratitude and appreciation for all the panelists. You have been wonderful, and look at the audience reaction. I'm really encouraged to do more such webinars in future. But I would also like to thank all my friends from the media who are attending this session. Thank you for your time. And in particular, the trade media, Arpit Kala of Indian Jeweler, and my agency, the creative agency Proton Communication. Thank you, Chirag, for coming out with such wonderful creatives. I think I learned a lot of marketing from you. They are really clutter breaking. Last but not the least, I also have an iPod, podcast partner, the Jewel Pod. It is only of its kind in our industry. So thank you, Krishna Raj. I'm really honored. You have given so much of publicity. You helped me reach out to so many people. Thank you very much. We'll meet again. Please keep in touch.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much of all of you.
Take care. Take care.
Wish you a happy weekend, all of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.